Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Sabzu, the rated R radio star, the best in the world, baby, is here for you. The podcast champion. I love that one. In fact, people are going nuts over my belt whenever I'm walking around with my belt. I have that big, well, I'd show it on camera. I think I showed it on the last Q&A hangout, but it's over in the gym, which I'll be hitting here in a little bit. So it is time for your Patreon only full video, the whole thing, Q&A live hangout. And yes, we're still at the point, even though Patreon has, like, they've added in like the Snapchat feature into the app. I almost used it when I went to go see Black Panther. What was that? Not this week, but last week. I almost used it for that when I was walking in and everything. But two things stopped me from doing it. One, I didn't know how the hell it would work. And like it deletes it after 24 hours anyway, or like 48 hours, where you could do video or photo or something. And the other is, like I don't have unlimited data on my phone, which I consider to be a feature, not a bug, more or less. And so I didn't, I just didn't bother. Like I figure streaming video would be a problem. But anyway, we're still using Google Hangouts. The day will come where that won't be so, but for now it's here. It's what gets used, and I'll be using it for doing other things with the show. Of course, there will be, and I'm not sure if I'm going to release the video of it, but we do have the Star Wars update that will be coming out this week that I will be doing with my co-host Robin, which is going to be a great time. He's phenomenal. And we're going to be using Hangouts to record that actually, so we could release the video, but I don't know that I'm necessarily going to do that. Anyway, it's Sunday night, baby, so let's have a good time. Of course, WWE is having their Elimination Chamber pay-per-view tonight. I don't know if I'm going to be watching that. There's no more Star Trek Discovery, but give you a little Star Trek Discovery flyby there. Oh yeah, if you're watching video do you see the Discovery go by, and that is an official Eagle Moss model of the Discovery, which was kind of shocked that I got that came in last week. I had it pre-ordered for a few months, and there it was. So anyway, feel free to ask questions in the YouTube chat if you want, or of course, sometimes people get in on the Hangout itself, which you are welcome to do, and you can do either audio or video. I did get some preloaded questions from people that they wanted me to talk about, and I'm certainly open to going into those. I haven't looked at all of them, so I would be reading some of them to you live, that's for sure, but we can start doing that before anybody wants to ask questions within the, like I said, you can ask questions within the YouTube chat, or you can join the Hangout, and the links for all that are of course available in the post on Patreon to be able to come in. So, okay, well, let's look at some of the questions that we've got here. Oh, real quick. Okay. I want to make an addendum to something I was talking about in episode 266 of Sovryn Tech. It was during Wildcard when I was talking about social media. I think I said Venmo. I meant Vero, Vero, and not the really cool character from the Spartacus Blood and Sand television show. One of the greatest shows ever. But it's called Vero, and this is supposedly like the new hotness. Like on Instagram, you see everybody saying, "Hey, follow me on Vero," blah, blah, blah. And no, look, more social media is not the solution. Okay. And honestly, in a very real sense, alternatives are not the solution. The problem is is social media itself. Like the very notion, I think, of social media is itself a problem. It's not, having a cleaner one or one that isn't so algorithmic. Apparently Vero doesn't have so many algorithms, and it gives you a lot more control and all this stuff. That's not the issue. The issue is the very medium itself is in my opinion very problematic. I know people don't like to hear the word problematic, but there you go. So anyway, just wanted to put some clarity on that. And also, I see no reason why Vero is in any way superior to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or any of that shit. I have no idea. Let's see. Oh boy, we already got questions coming in. All right, we'll hit one of these and let's see. Did you sympathize with T'Challa's perspective or Killmonger's perspective? Oh, and Black Panther. Okay, right, which we already mentioned. So good, that fits in. So spoiler alerts, folks, which again, though, if you actually read comic books, I don't think this is something that can be spoiled. It's like Infinity War. What, you think Thanos is going to win? Like, how could you spoil that film? It's like going to see Titanic. You know what I mean? Yeah, the word problematic can be problematic. Exactly. Anyway, okay, so with T'Challa's perspective or Killmonger's perspective, I would definitely be. I'd probably be in the isolationist camp. So I guess I wouldn't be in Killmonger's perspective, where Killmonger wanted to, like, empower and get out all the weapons to everybody. I mean, first off, I wouldn't be starting a war. So I guess that automatic, like by default, that puts me more in T'Challa's perspective. I think, like, it's like I said, Black Panther, the character itself, isn't always the most interesting thing in comic book history, even though I've regularly read Black Panther's comics. I mean, and he's had multiple volumes, which is a good and a bad thing. Sometimes you make, there's a new volume. I mean, right. So there's a difference between volumes and issues. For those that don't read comic books, you have issues, which is what comes out every month. You have volumes, which is the numeration for, say, a series. Like, Fantastic Four has had over 50, 60 years, has had 5 or 6 volumes where the title has either ended or rebooted or something like that. Like, you end up with a new number 1, that becomes another volume. Okay. Black Panther has had like 4 volumes, over his time. But that also, understand that means there's been points where there was not a Black Panther comic. It wasn't just a reboot. Like, literally you would go years without a Black Panther comic. I think my video just cut out. Why is Hangouts has been doing that? I've noticed that throughout the day, that I'd come in and check on the studio and suddenly the video would go away. Anyway, I brought it back. I'll keep an eye out for that. So Black Panther, like Iron Man, it's so funny. These characters were nothing. I mean, like they were literally nothing. Like nobody cared about them. I mean, generally a comic book having multiple volumes is usually a bad thing, because even if it's not for the reason that they canceled the title, that they canceled the comic book, if they had to go back, if they had to do a number 1 again, you only reboot a comic book, or, go renumerate, like go back to having an issue number 1 and all that, is if your sales suck. Like, if your sales are solid, there's a reason that Action Comics is almost up to like issue 1000. There's a reason Detective Comics is almost up to issue 1000 and all that, even though there have been attempts at renumbering with those. But part of the reason is because there's been no, they're solid sellers. There's no reason to fucking reboot the comic. You don't need a volume 2. You don't need, an issue number 1 again. You just don't. In fact, the only reason those ever got renumerated was because they did DC did New 52. Granted, we're talking about Marvel with Black Panther. But I find it so goddamn funny that people are so gaga, and I've talked about this many times, but that people are just so nuts about Black Panther. And look, the movie, like, I get it. I really understand the cultural importance of that film. And I'm all for, as a science fiction fan alone, to have Afrofuturism get put with a big budget on the big screen. I am so on board with that. You have no idea how much that excites me. Okay. But I'm just saying, let's face it, this character meant nothing to almost nobody for the multitude of decades that he's been around. Other than, like I was saying before I got on this tirade, is that I love the idea of Wakanda. I think that that's so cool. That there's just like this little secretive, highly advanced country, we'll say, that you don't expect, you don't see coming. And honestly, I even like that it's in Africa. Like, I think all of that is really cool. Like I said, I love that Afrofuturism. I'm a huge fan of that. Let's see what else we got in the YouTube chat. Nakia wanted to open up Wakanda and share their tech without all the war and empire building. Her position was the best. Yeah. So that's T'Challa's sister, right? Yeah, I mean, I can get that too, but at the same time, like in a dream world scenario, or if I was writing Black Panther, I'd totally stick with like an isolationist view. I really would, because the world's not ready for that shit. You know what I mean? And I think that that's such a cool angle to like really like a far better story to explore. I mean, a lot of critics have come out and even said that it felt like a lot of the storyline with Killmonger was very forced in what was, being presented there. And I kind of agree with that. I think you don't even need Killmonger's position really to explore this idea of, should we be isolationist or should we be sharing with the rest of the world? I think there's a lot of intrigue that can happen with that without having some kind of, political battle of any kind. So let's see. What other questions do we have here? Have you seen the documentary about Andy Whitfield? Be Here Now? No, but I will add that to the list and I will check that out. In fact, same person that just asked that question, they asked me if I've seen The Expanse. Yes, Stephanie and I, we love The Expanse, and I know season 3 is coming April 11th. Somebody just said, wow. I'm guessing that's in response maybe to my more isolationist view. Feel free to elaborate if you know. I mean, that's fine. At the same time, I don't mind, like, you know, the idea of sharing technology and stuff like that. I'll talk about the Expanse more in a second. And we can talk about anything, folks. We can talk about geeky shit. We can talk about tech. We can talk about science, relationships, whatever. I don't care. Ask any kind of questions you want as far as this goes. Let's see. Where was I? Oh, okay. So the isolationist views. Like I said, I'm all about, you know, like sharing technology and everything. But I mean, it's one thing to like share with, say, you know, within the paradigm of a fictional universe and the Black Panther storyline. Okay. Not necessarily real life. The idea of sharing, like, even just the weapons technology that Wakanda has with the US government should to anybody be seen as a terrifying concept. You know, not that, I mean, like, and that's more of the, that would be Nakia's like position, right? You know, I mean, it's kind of weird because you're always going to be, I don't know, you're always, in some ways, I think you're always going to be sort of responsible for that kind of technology that you put out there. You know, it's not like, I mean, if we're talking about encryption technology, oh, hell, unleash it on the world. I don't care. You know, like give it to everybody. You got the best encryption in the world, open source that shit and let everybody use it. You know, that's fine. But when we're talking about weapons and a lot of other stuff, ooh, I don't know. And oh, there goes the video again. Jeez. Anyway, and with Killmonger's position, I mean, he was really looking for people to die, and that's a position I can't agree with. You know, like just on that stance. Now, if Killmonger's position was, okay, we're going to give everybody shield tech, where, you know, we're going to give our people, you know, whatever that abstract notion is, we're going to give our people shield technology. Great. I am on board with that. But again, if we're talking about weapons, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling that at all. So hopefully that explains a little bit more about what I said. Okay. So The Expanse, yeah, just probably the best show on television right now. And I will even say it's better than Star Trek Discovery. Interestingly enough, one of the preset questions that I got was about Babylon 5. So maybe this will be a nice segue into that. But anyway, The Expanse, just amazing what they're putting on there. It's good, hard science fiction, meaning that, like, well, I know what happens in The Expanse. Like, I'm aware of what occurs in the novels and everything. But for what we've got right now, let me just put it this way, like, hard science fiction, meaning that it's sticking within the solar system. The technology is believable. What happens is all very believable, and it doesn't require some kind of MacGuffin or something like that, or, you know, some kind of like wild technology to sort of come out of nowhere. That's what I really, really enjoy about The Expanse. And the production level, all that is fantastic. And it's about goddamn time that the Sci-Fi Channel, or SIFI, delivered on this sort of thing. They should have been doing this a long time ago. I mean, and not that they've had bad shows. First Wave, Farscape, Lex, even, you know, I mean, especially First Wave tops that's in my top 20 as far as television shows. And as far as inspirational, like, shows that have inspired me, it's easily in my top 10. First Wave is a tremendous show. So yeah, The Expanse, I love it. Definitely recommend it to anybody that wants to watch that. But okay, let me look at the YouTube chat here. We got some other questions. So let's see. I think Killmonger was out for Killmonger, not helping other Black people outside of Wakanda. Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth to that. He was really wanting to be pretty tyrannical. Let's see, got another one. Share the medical tech too. Don't hoard that shit. Yes, definitely. Of course. Yeah. Medical tech I'd put that in the same vein as, like, you know, defensive, like genuine defensive technologies, as in technologies that can't be used for offense, like a shield, like a bubble shield, you know, force shield of some kind. Yeah, definitely get that medical tech out there. Let's see, another question. I'm worried that SIFI will do something stupid and pull the show. Yeah, you know, they might pull The Expanse. Like, I think it was actually it was up in the air if we were going to get a season 3 with The Expanse. And I think the only reason that they're not pulling it, I don't think they're getting ROI, not real ROI. They're not getting real return on investment in such an expensive show as The Expanse. I think they right now, and in fact, you can listen to, like, you know, kind of the executives at SIFI. I'll call it SIFI. I want to call it the Sci-Fi Channel so bad, but that's part of the problem. Is this really not the Sci-Fi Channel anymore? And this isn't anything new. People have known this for years now, pretty much ever since. And I'm a wrestling fan. pretty much as soon as they started putting wrestling on there, we knew the jig was up. Like this is over. This has nothing to do, with science fiction. Let's see, they did that with Defiance. Yep, yeah, that was another one that they pulled. But like The Expanse, this is in Hollywood. This is what you would call a prestige show, or in Hollywood, in movie business, it'd be a prestige movie, meaning that you're going to lose money on it, but it does really well with the critics. And that's what I think the Sci-Fi Channel knows they need to, or what Sci-Fi knows they need to do with The Expanse. They have to have this kind of show on their network, or they are going to lose all of their viewers. And the executives, what I was about to say was, the executives there, they know that they lost science fiction fans, and that they just ended up looking like any other channel. I mean, Sci-Fi ended up becoming, no different than FX, or I don't know, pick your cable network. Like it's just like there was nothing special or defining about it anymore. And they know that. And that's why they made Childhood's End, which that was a little rough, to put it nicely, and why they're making some other shows and everything. And now they have real competition with the fact that Amazon Prime will just smoke them. They'll just blow them out of the water as far as like the quality and not just production quality, but story quality and everything that's going on as far as science fiction. Netflix will kill them. I mean, they have to have a show like The Expanse. They really can't let go of it, even if they lose all the money in the world on that show. Okay. Because if they don't have it, they're going to lose everything anyway. So they might as well, just roll the dice. It's like that prize horse that you just keep running, because even if the horse loses, you've got to have that for your reputation. You've got to have that prize horse in your stable. That way people know, that you're out there. So I think that's really the score with The Expanse. That's why since we got season 3, I don't think the show's going to get canceled. They're going to keep running this for a while. So, okay, let's, what else do we have here? You believe that Hollywood will die like Silicon Valley? Yeah, I think it's already happening. I think Hollywood is in really, I love, by the way, I love these questions. I love talking the geeky shit. And I know it's one of the things that really hooks people into Sovryn Tech. So I don't mind talking about all of this at all. Let's see, someone responded, I don't think Hollywood will die as long as we have these oppressive IP laws. Yeah, so, but I understand that, and I think like it'll always kind of be there, but as far as it being the mainstream form of entertainment out there, I think that there's so many ways you can get around IP laws right now. And, when you look at like the Star Trek Axanar case, they're afraid. They're really afraid, because they knew that something like Axanar would potentially even be better than Discovery. And I'm totally open to the fact, what I know of Star Trek Axanar, which was a prequel to the original series, it would have been better than Discovery, quite frankly. As good as Discovery is, I like Discovery. I've talked about this on Star Trek Updates. So yeah, I think there's ways around it. And in fact, a really great experiment. This is something I'm really experimenting with. And this is the reason I'm doing the franchise-based erotic audio theater this year. And again, Star Trek is the one that's the one that everybody wants done, or not everybody, that the most people that I gave the decision to wanted to do. Axanar's not, someone just asked, Axanar's not happening. Yeah, Axanar is like, not at least the way that it was intended. It's not going to be happening. It's a really ugly situation, and it's such a shame. Especially, like when you look at Star Trek Continues, that's way better than Discovery. Like, that's crazy how good Star Trek Continues was, right? And it's such a shame. But anyway, my point. So, doing the Star Trek erotic audio theater, I want to see what happens when that comes out, because I know what level of production I can bring. I know what I can do. I know how talented the people I have involved are. In fact, I got an email from a patron who he said his housemate, that she's this professional Shakespearean actor, and that she'd be very intrigued in being a part of the erotic audio theater, and which is great, like, fuck yes. Like, people get it. They want to be on board with this stuff. And that's why I think Hollywood really can die, or at least it won't be the premier form of entertainment going into the future, because now anybody can do this shit. Like there's nothing holding everybody back, and you can just do the most amazing stuff. And I think that there's ways you can worm around the IP laws, or really just because of the internet itself. I mean, I understand that perspective that the person brought up. I really do. I don't think that's an unfair point to bring up. And it's proof that yes, Hollywood will kind of always be around, because there's always going to be certain content that only they can put out there. But again, it doesn't mean that they'll be the premier point of entertainment, I think. But like once you put something up on the internet, it doesn't matter if it gets taken down. It's there forever. Like there's always going to be a way to find it, and you're always going to be able to repopulate it somewhere and everything. And I think that's so exciting that we're in that world where we can, to some degree, ignore the IP laws to some degree. But your point is still sound, that Hollywood will be around as long as there is IP. Yeah, it'll always kind of be around, just like Silicon Valley. Sure, the exciting shit is not happening in Silicon Valley, right? As far as tech goes. But the tech giants are going to be around for a while, I mean, like that's true. But for effectively, I think both of those geographic cultural areas are on their way out, if not already out. So anyway, let's see. It's ironic that Hollywood is pro IP but came into existence defying IP laws of its time. Oh yeah, that's a great point. There's I don't think it was called Hollywood Empire. I'm trying to remember there's a documentary that talks about like the early history of Hollywood. And yeah, I mean, it was, honestly, like I'll just call it, I have no problem saying this. It's a bunch of Jews that brought water to the desert, and they ignored everything and everyone, and they scared the shit out of the government. I mean, the government's what whipped them into respecting IP and respecting laws and all that. But otherwise, Hollywood was a phenomenal rebellion, not just a rebellion against laws, but a rebellion against culture. Like they were really trying to create, a very much a new reality, in a very real sense. Hollywood was trying to do that. It's such a pity that it's become such a that so much of it has become a whipping boy for, whatever cultural, government, even military industrial complex, pick your term, corporatist, desires and whims and whatever that they have out there, to push that, to be a propaganda machine. It's such a shame that it's become that, because there was a time where it was not. But anyway, so yeah, it's let's see, another from the YouTube chat here. Yeah, the exciting tech stuff is happening in Florida with Magic Leap / sarcasm. Yeah, Magic Leap. Yeah, that's the joke. I love it. Yeah, well, I mean, again, in all, like, that's that's very funny, but like at the same time, we know this statistically, that the best programmers in the world are in Switzerland and New Zealand. They're not even in the US anymore. So, I mean, take that for, they're literally not in Silicon Valley. Let's see. Yeah, reading on. Yeah, but it's promoted pro-war propaganda during its golden age period. Yeah, this is true, and certainly that was a part of it. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, no argument for me on that point. So okay. I mean, one could argue that's the part of culture that actually Hollywood and very few media industries has ever tried to rebel against, is this idea that you got to have conflict, like physical, violent conflict, to create an interesting story. There's just far too few industries that really, get on that. And I get it, because they think it sells, and it does appear to sell. But, if you're trying to create like a new reality, go all the way, make it happen. I mean, even in my stories, there's, usually some kind of, like, there might be a fight of some kind or something like that. It's tough to get away from that. It really is. Okay. So, while we're talking the geeky shit, let me get to let's look at the questions here. Pull up the page. Okay. Stop taking all the libertarian women. Shut the fuck up. Fuck you. Whoever the hell wrote that. No, I know who wrote that. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay. Babylon 5. So in fact, this kind of plays in because the question is that they're shocked that I consider Babylon 5, which I advertise for on my show all the time. Of course, Babylon 5 was a show from the 90s, so it's not like anybody's making any money off of this. I'm not, other than maybe somehow Straczynski is, and if he is, good, because Babylon 5 changed my life. But pretty much asking, with Babylon 5 being such a political show, which, yep, that's an accurate assumption or assessment to say it's a very political show. They're shocked that it's my favorite show. There's some other stuff in here, and they asked about Battlestar Galactica. I've already talked about why I hate the new Battlestar Galactica many times over, so I'm not going to talk about that again. But as far as Babylon 5, like, it's my favorite show, but it's political. Yeah, I mean, it's political, and that's a core part of speaking of conflict, that's a core part of the conflict within the show, within Babylon 5. But it's really far more philosophical. It's way more of a show about philosophy, and dueling philosophies in a like, really. In fact, one of the main philosophies in the show, because you have really in that show, you have entire races and empires, alien races and empires that represent entire ideologies and represent entire philosophies. For example, you have the Shadows, who are actually the villains of the series. And I mean, that's to say in a very real way, isn't, I mean, they just are like they are set up as the villains in the show. Of course, you find out that certain heroes within it that seem to be heroes in the beginning also get set up as villains in the end. But one of there's kind of two major questions within it, where you have the Vorlons, where their question is, who are you? And then you have the Shadows, where the question that they ask anybody that they're trying to sway or get under their, I don't know, get on their side or whatever. They will say, they ask the question, what do you want? And I think that question, ironically, the bad guys, their question is the accurate one. In fact, I was having dinner with Ellen the other day, and, we were talking about, the whole concept of what do you want and everything. And she said, yeah, that is the most important question, because you really can't even know who you are if you don't answer the question, what do you want? So, but that's actually in many ways the solution that Babylon 5 comes to with the philosophies is that you've never, first off, they point fingers at the Vorlons and the Shadows, saying you guys have never even bothered to answer your own questions. But then they say, that more or less it's kind of both, like you need to answer both. But I don't think, but what Babylon 5 doesn't explicitly say, nor even maybe implicitly, is that the first question you need to be able to answer in your life to even understand anything else going on around you is, what do you want? You've got to be able to, I bring it up all the time, but it's so important. And it's so funny how many people I talk to just in my own life that don't have the answer to that question. And it's fucking key. So anyway, with Babylon 5, why is it my favorite TV show? Because it is that. It's a philosophical play far more than it is a political play. Also, just the presentation of the show blows away anything that was certainly done before, and maybe even since. Where it is this 5-year-long set story arc that makes sense, that is cohesive, coherent. It's not necessarily contradictory at all. And you've got to watch the whole thing. Like you have to watch all, however many, it's 5 seasons, about 22 episodes a season. So, do the math, over 100 episodes, do the math on that. And you've got to, you have to experience that whole thing. And it's just such a beautiful buildup, especially if in the 90s, you were watching it at the time. When Babylon 5 first came out, it was one of the first major new science fiction properties. This would have been back in 93, on regular television, not cable, but just regular television. And that was appealing alone to me, just being like a 12-year-old who loved science fiction and had to constantly rewatch these old tapes of Babylon 5, of Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, the original Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek, and whatever else. And like, that's all you had. And so when Babylon 5 came out, that was really exciting. There was others. What was Star Hunter, Space Precinct? I know there was a bunch of shows out there at the time, but as far as something that like I could even catch on a Sunday, it was there, and so that was inspirational. In fact, I didn't even see like the entirety of the second season until much later. I knew the first season by heart, and I finally got back to watching it when the third season hit, and it just hooked you. Like it couldn't. And so when you were watching the show weekly, it really meant a lot more, because you were just dying every Sunday when that was going to come on, and you're going to find out what was happening next in the story. Not just getting another cool adventure. You needed to find out what was happening next. It was so huge. So anyway, yeah, I mean that's the main thing with Babylon 5. I mean it has a lot of cool factors to it that a lot of science fiction just doesn't have. I do appreciate it really is hard science fiction where real science is being involved in a lot of things, just the way the Star Furies fly and all that. I've talked about Babylon 5 many times, but yeah, that's sure it's political, but it's more, again, like I said, it's more about philosophy and it's more about rebellion. It's way more about being rebellious, which I think is an important message to get out at any point. So let's see. Characters on The Big Bang Theory hate Babylon 5, LOL. Yeah, I hate The Big Bang Theory. So I've talked about that on Patreon episodes. I think that show is so patronizing. I think that show is like really insulting to nerds and all that. That's funny. Let's see. Another person says tapes. LOL. That sounds so dated. Yeah, I know. And Babylon 5 was one of those shows. I think I talked about it. Oh, I was reviewing Stargate Origins. I did the Stargate Origins review show recently. And on there, I talked about how like I was really serious about how I was recording every episode of SG-1 on VHS and all that. Babylon 5, when Babylon 5 got bought by TNT, I did the same thing. I had this whole shelf where, like, I mean, because, again, we're talking over 100 episodes, and I had like everything all beautifully like categorized, recorded, but it took up this massive bookshelf just to have all the tapes of Babylon 5. And it's hilarious. Like, I just ended up getting the Blu-rays for the original series of Star Trek, and you got 3 seasons there. I remember what that looked like on VHS, and now it's just like this one little, I mean, I could pull it down. It's this one little case, and you have so many hundreds of hours of, it's just amazing. Let's see. When were you into philosophy at 12 and 13? Babylon 5 was a syndicated show, right? Okay, so 2 things. Yeah, I wasn't into philosophy necessarily at 12 and 13. I was definitely into rebelliousness, but yeah, not so much into philosophy. But then you didn't know how philosophical the show was until later on. Like, it was very smart. Babylon 5 did it kind of, oh boy, how to put this? So, like I said, the main draw originally for Babylon 5 was that there was so little science fiction out there. If you loved science fiction, it's just, it was what was available next to Star Trek. And so you watched it, but then, like, and again, it has a lot of different cool factors to it. It has mysteries. They did a great job in setting up a lot of mysteries early on to keep you hooked and to keep you watching. But by the time that we get into the 3rd season, which, I would be more like 15, 16, stuff like this. Yeah, I was definitely more into philosophy at that point. I was definitely, like at that point, I was literally reading Nietzsche and, and some other figures. So yeah, I would say later when Babylon 5 got philosophical, it was kind of perfect timing because I was at a point where I was really questioning everything, including religion and a lot of this other stuff. And Babylon 5 definitely helped out with that. It was a syndicated show. In fact, there was a package called PTEN, Primetime Entertainment Network, I think was the name of it, that would get sold off to whoever would buy it. Fox, whoever, whatever network would take it. And on Sundays, you'd have 2 or 3 hours of shows. There was Super Force, which was a really exciting one. There was a show called Point Man, which I thought was a lot of fun. Not a science fiction show, but it was a lot of fun. And Babylon 5 was one of the shows that was originally part of the syndicated package deal called PTEN. But I would watch all those shows, like I'd every single one, it'd be right after Superboy and My Secret Identity and everything. And it was one of the main ways that you could even get like any kind of science fiction out there. Let's see, another question. So, wow, this is awesome. We're 30 minutes into the show and we're just talking all geeky shit. By all means, boys, boys and girls, let's do it. Let's see. Do you believe that DS9 is the least appreciated show of all the Star Trek series? And then somebody responded, said DS9 was great. DS9 was great. I don't think it's the least appreciated, though. In fact, now it's almost like the Vogue thing where you say that DS9 is actually the best Star Trek. Like, that really seems to be in vogue right now, that that it gets a lot more credit. I think at the time it was far more of a dark horse. In fact, DS9 and Babylon 5 have a very, I've talked about this, like they were really competing shows all the way. In fact, I think Deep Space Nine was copying. I think somebody got their hands, I'm guessing at CBS/Paramount. Somebody got their hands on the Babylon 5 Writer's Bible, I'm assuming, and I think they were scared to death. And they they tried to copy Babylon 5 in every way except for they weren't going with the serialized storytelling, with the like more of the novelization style storytelling or novelized storytelling. They went with, episode by episode, because I mean, it's too weird. There's no doubt that Straczynski, you can tell by the dates, Straczynski had the idea first, but like, you're creating another show with a space station where the guy who's the head of the space station is some kind of like is considered a religious figure by another race on the station. I mean, like, they're just way too fucking similar. And Babylon 5 is the better show between those two, I think, easily. As much as, and look, I love Deep Space Nine. Like, I love that show all the way. Everything about it, even the seventh season. Like, I think Ezri Dax is one of my favorite characters. Jadzia was great too, but I loved it even when they brought on Ezri. I think Voyager gets way. People don't give that show enough credit. I really I love Voyager, and partly because we've been talking about this whole time, kind of that hard science fiction edge. I think Voyager really delivers that. I mean, they what was it, like the Voth or whatever, that dinosaur race that they find out was actually from Earth. Like, that's what happened to the dinosaurs. Is it turns out the dinosaurs did have a space program. That's like one of the old arguments for, why do humans need to have a space program? It's like, well, because what could happen to us, or what happened to the dinosaurs could happen to us, and the dinosaurs could have survived if they had a space program. Well, in Voyager, you find out they absolutely did, and and like, there's this wildly advanced species in the Delta Quadrant. And I like stories like that. I thought were so cool. 7 of 9 was such an interesting character. The stuff they were doing with the Borg, Unimatrix Zero, and all that, like, was really cool. I think that show gets a bad rap for completely unjustified reasons. I mean, we got a Captain Sulu story in that. It was, and the thing, I think what might even put it, puts it above Deep Space Nine, because I wouldn't argue that Deep Space Nine is the best Star Trek show ever. It's very good, and it's very different, and different in a very good way. But I think what puts it over is that Voyager seemed far more self-aware of the broader Star Trek franchise. Meaning it was more aware of the original series, which Deep Space Nine seemed to almost completely ignore the original series. And I mean, other than, yes, you would have the Klingons, you'd bring on Core, right? And, and all that, you'd have that, that whole story arc. But I just feel like Voyager Voyager is where Star Trek started to become Star Trek for Star Trek's sake, which some people see as a bad thing. I don't think so. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see it as a good thing. And maybe that's the main difference for a lot of people. But I think Voyager is severely underrated. And and not that Voyager's perfect. I've said this, in fact, I'll never get over this. One of the, this seems so small, but to me, it's one of the greatest moments of my life. So Voyager was celebrating, I forget, it's like 20 years or something like that, whatever, recently. And I made a post about it on Instagram, and I said, happy 20th or whatever anniversary. And I said, it was like, this is, for me, this was, Star Trek. This is hardcore science fiction. I said, but you know what? It's like, what it missed? It could have been the greatest porn ever, because you got to start having babies. I mean, and people should have been snooping right and left on that ship. And Jerry Ryan, 7 of 9 herself, liked my post. That meant the world to me. To this, I have the screenshot of it. The fantasies I have around that, because I was very explicit in saying this show should have had a whole ton of fucking on there, and she was so on board with that. And that's where that show dropped the ball, is that far more than like Enterprise. When Enterprise first came out, it tried to be sexy, right? With like the decontam room and, rubbing gels on each other and all that, all of which, hey, great. I think that's awesome. But Voyager is really where they should have gone with the sexy, like much more. And you could say, well, wasn't 7 of 9 alone, like a very sexy situation, very sexy affair. Sure. Yeah. Like I can grasp that she was definitely put on there for sex appeal. She ended up becoming so much more, but she was definitely on there for sex appeal. But it wasn't enough, like you should have had a lot more sex. So anyway, let's see. DS9 was reading from the YouTube chat here. DS9 was the show that introduced me to Avery Brooks. That man is a phenomenal actor. And then another person says, yeah, Avery Brooks is underrated for sure. Yeah, you know who I loved? I knew Avery Brooks before Deep Space Nine because I was a huge fan, even as a very young kid. I was a big fan of the show Spencer for Hire. And he played Hawk on that. In fact, I think Hawk ended up like with his own kind of sequel sideshow. And Avery Brooks was badass. That's why he became a recurring character and would end up with his own spinoff. I still enjoy the show Spencer for Hire. I mean, very basic, kind of whodunit stuff, but I dig that. And sadly, like Avery Brooks, I think a lot of people know this. Like if you watch there's two documentaries called The Captains. I think there's been two of them now, if I remember correctly, but I certainly remember the first one very well, that William Shatner produced, and he interviewed Avery Brooks, and it looks like Avery Brooks, like he's lost his mind. I mean, literally, like he's just out there. It's very sad to watch. Just, I don't know. It's weird. He's a guy, I don't know that I ever saw him at a convention. Thinking about it, like I don't know that he ever really did the circuit so much. Maybe I must have seen him at one, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what his score is. So, anyway, okay. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, I've noticed the video does keep cutting out on this. This is why we need to get away from Google Hangouts, folks. Because screw that. Let's see. Does he have dementia? I hope not. I don't know, but like the whole time he's just like sitting at a piano and playing it and talking, and he's talking very lyrically and everything. And it came off very, very strange. Very strange, I thought, when you watch that documentary. Speaking of which, there is that DS9 documentary that's being made, and I think Ira Stephen Burr, who's kind of the brains behind Deep Space Nine, I think he's actually like behind that now to some degree. I have not watched. There's the Leonard Nimoy documentary that Leonard Nimoy's son made recently, the Spock documentary. I do have it that recently came out. I haven't watched it yet, but I will probably review that for a Star Trek update. Personally, it's very tough for me. It's really tough for me to watch stuff like about Leonard Nimoy. Like I can still watch, classic Trek, but like anything that has to do, like there's a great documentary that was made while Leonard Nimoy was still alive called Mind Meld, where it's just him and William Shatner talking. And just deal with it, folks. Like I can't watch it without crying. Like, and I listened to William Shatner's memoir, Leonard. This is before I think William Shatner kind of started losing his mind. Not like Avery Brooks, but more in a metaphorical sense. And like I just, it's so tough to experience that shit, and I really appreciated when Leonard Nimoy made that tweet about how if anybody needs like a granddad in their life or something, I'll be your symbolic, your real but metaphorical at the same time grandfather. And I totally took that right to heart and took that on. And I've talked about that on Sovryn Tech Prime episodes when he died, because man, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Okay, let's see what's in the YouTube chat here. So, but my point in saying all that was I will get to watching that Spock documentary, but that's going to be tough. Okay, so the question is, I'll first this comment. Oh, that sucks. Nimoy must have had a big impact on your life. Oh yeah. I think like characters like Data, and in fact, there was an episode of The Next Generation where you kind of got that with Data, where the little boy's trying to copy Data, and like they're sort of playing along. I mean, there's parts of it that are kind of disturbing in a way, but where Dr. Crusher plays along and makes this young boy think that she's actually converting him to be an android like Data because he so much wants to be like Data and everything. And I think any kid that grows up feeling very alienated from the rest of the world, this is why people get attracted to X-Men when they're young. This is why people get attracted, I think, to characters like Spock, where they have, okay, there's this human side that I'm trying to figure out, but then there's this other side of me that nobody understands, which in the case of Spock would be a Vulcan, that I think is a very attractive, part. And just the brilliance, that the character of Spock would deliver, and Nimoy himself could deliver as well, is, that's really inspirational and can get you through a lot of honestly very ugly times. So yeah, Yeah. Anytime any of the originals, DeForest Kelly was the first to die, then James Doohan, then Nimoy. Anytime the characters from the original series die, it hits me hard. Nimoy was particularly hard though. But anyway, okay, so let's see. Another question. How many episodes of Firefly did you try to give a chance before declaring that you hated the show? Oh, no, I watched the whole thing. I watched the movie. I watched Serenity. I've even read the comic books because there's been like 3 different series now, so mini series now so far with the comic books. I mean, I get it. It's not bad. It's actually not like terrible. I get a little hyperbolic when I talk about it. The problem is like the part that annoyed me is especially when I was getting like early on when I would have identified as a libertarian and I was just getting into libertarianism. So many people said that to me, that this was like the libertarian show, right? This was libertarian science fiction, and I just don't agree with that at all. And I've had other people who good friends in New Hampshire where this one gal, she told me, she's like, yeah, she says that's just stupid for people, or I'm not saying you're stupid if you think that it's libertarian, okay, but her words were like, that's just crazy to say that that's a libertarian, like somehow that's a libertarian dream of a show. I don't get that. That's my actual real problem with it. The other problem I had with it, and I've talked about this before, is that and in fact I shared the articles when I talked about this. I think it was on a Patreon episode where I, on a Q&A, where I said it was like where people were saying Firefly is going to be the next Star Trek. And I said, no way. Like there's like, I watched this. There's no way this is going to be the next Star Trek. That is not happening. And 10 years later, who's right? Me, or however long it's been. I don't know if it's been 10 years, but like, there's just not like that. That was such bullshit marketing that annoyed the hell out of me, which marketing is always one of my, main pet peeves with just about anything. Yeah, boy, that just drove me nuts when they would say that. So no, I get it. Firefly isn't bad, but it's also not like at the level of greatness. It doesn't deserve the reputation it has. I guess that's my point, is it really doesn't deserve that at all. As to where there were shows, similar deal where Fox would cancel them early. I mean, Fox has done this, willy nilly. You think Dollhouse, right? I mean, that got 2 seasons at least, but I thought that was, Liza Dushku, she's fantastic. That show is fantastic. There have been sequel comic books for that have been, that have lived up to the hype, I think. Or, one of my favorite shows, Kindred the Embraced, and look, folks, when I say favorite shows, I should probably say like that's in my top 100 or something. I don't know, or my top 50. I don't know. But Kindred the Embrace was that was by Aaron Spelling, who you'd think Aaron Spelling, 90210 Melrose Place, especially in the 90s, you'd think he'd be untouchable, right? He made Kindred the Embrace, which was based off of, the White Wolf properties, tabletop RPG properties. And that show was, I mean, just dynamite. Pure dynamite. I thought that was so cool. Great sexy vampire. I mean, it didn't hurt that Stacey Haddock was in it as well, who of Sequest season 1 fame. I mean, she's just, let's just call it, she's one of the hottest women to ever walk the earth. I mean, she was something else, and she played Lana in Superboy, The Adventures of Superboy. Kindred the Embrace, like that's a show that deserves years later for people to be mad that got canceled, because it couldn't have been that expensive to produce, because it was set in the modern day. I had vampires and all that other shit, but it was set in the modern day. There's really no good reason why that should have been canned. And there is a lot of real like anti-government, kind of sentiment within that show, more so than I think just about anything else. Or anything else that gets attributed with that, maybe, just by the very nature of how the vampires live and everything. I'm still in awe that, I mean, nobody, like most people don't even remember that show. It was phenomenal. And it's short, kind of like just with Firefly, where there's only like 11 episodes or something. And I think a couple of them never even aired. It's such a shame, because I mean, that show is hot, and it was big at a time when like Highlander, was really rocking as well. And, they're kind of, as far as styles, they're kind of related shows. And anyway. Let's see what else we got. Someone in the YouTube chat says, I think Firefly, like a lot of shows / movies, has some great libertarian moments, but yeah, they aren't made with it in mind. Yeah, exactly. Like I could see that. I mean, but then, Star Trek The Next Generation has great, like genuinely great, literal anti-state statements, moments in it, right? The drumhead. You take that episode, the drumhead, where Picard gives that whole speech against Nora Sati, saying the first time that anybody loses a freedom, we're all damaged by it. I mean, or the episode with Lal, right? Where, Picard says right to the Admiral, says, "You think I'm going to hand over somebody's kid to the state? Now, well, I'm his captain." I mean, like, there's, and that's the thing. Nobody says that, or not a lot of people anyway. I know a couple people that actually say this, but most people don't think of, or people, in the liberty movement or whatever, don't hold up The Next Generation as a libertarian show. If anything, a lot of them will hate it because they think it's socialist, but it's way more libertarian than Firefly could even dream of being, because Brandon Braga, who used to be a dear friend of mine, he's a libertarian, I mean, capital L, but he's a libertarian. So like you literally had a libertarian writing the fucking show. That's part of what drives me nuts about this, is that, oh, Firefly's the great libertarian thing. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Anyway, so many Trekkers hate Wesley Crusher, hate the Wesley Crusher character in that series. Yeah. And somebody pointed out that Vampire the Masquerade was the name of the White Wolf property that that Kindred the Embrace was based off of. Yes, which also, what a great RPG and great video games like Bloodlines. What a tremendous video game and all that. Anyway, so let's see. Yeah, so many Trekkers hate Wesley Crusher character in that series. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Because I'm not the biggest fan of Wesley either, even though arguably my favorite episode of The Next Generation is from the 5th season, called The Game, which centers around Wesley Crusher and another character named Robin Leffler, who would end up being a bigger character in the New Frontier novel series that I think is tremendous, but she would be played by Ashley Judd. And so, I mean, I respect Wesley, but like, yeah, he's not my favorite character either. But I saw convention footage. This is probably 2-3 years ago, and I think I talked about it on a Sovryn Tech Prime episode, or maybe it was a special or something. But where Gene Roddenberry, like, he was getting like harassed and heckled and like almost, just shy of tomatoes getting thrown at him on stage at a convention. And it was because like Trekkers really hated, like you said, they really hated Wesley Crusher. And I loved what he had to say. He said, he was getting mad at people, which I imagine Gene Roddenberry actually probably did that a lot. I think he was almost a Steve Jobs-ish kind of person, even though, a lot of books and, biographies would maybe say something different. But he got mad and he said, you don't understand. He says, I make this stuff for me, and I was like, yeah, I love hearing that, because, and that's the part that I think a lot of people don't respect about creators. This is the same reason that I don't mind the prequels with Star Wars, because who the fuck am I to tell George Lucas what he should do? Now, I'll tell Disney what they should fucking do, because they didn't create this shit. That's a very different story. Like when people get mad about The Last Jedi, and look, I like The Last Jedi overall. Okay. And I'm going to watch it so many times in my life. So obviously I'm not exactly complaining there, but I'll sure as fuck complain about what Disney wants to do. But as far as like the original creator, the guy that made this universe, just like Gene Roddenberry, the guy that made this universe, don't you fucking tell him what he should be doing. I mean, he's the creator. Have respect for that. Just like, I get people that talk to me, well, I think the Sovereign Universe should have more men or should do this. It's, well, who are you? This is for me. I'm glad people want to be along for the ride. And that's the beauty of it, is that people get to join you and you get to find people who are like-minded because because they appreciate your art. They appreciate your creation, right? And there's certainly things to be said for that Gene Roddenberry, how much of a hand did he have in a lot of aspects of Star Trek and everything? Sure. Like people talk about how actually Herb Sallow created a lot of what made the original series great, or Matt Jeffries, and stuff like this. And, or, that Brannon and others would end up really picking up the ball and running with The Next Generation. I think the argument that Ronald D. Moore made Star Trek great is bullshit, because you can just look at Battlestar Galactica and obviously that's not true, because he did terrible with that. But, like I'm not saying you have to respect the creators, but at the same time, like I love that attitude that he put on when people were talking to him about Wesley Crusher. He made it very clear. This was him. This was his child self, which inspired much of Star Trek, if you believe his biographies. This is his child self getting put onto the screen. And great. Have a good time. Fine. Not everybody likes it. Okay. There's plenty. It's an ensemble cast. You got plenty of other people that you get to, appreciate and enjoy as a character. So yeah, I'm not the biggest Wesley Crusher fan either, but I get it. I understand what the person was trying to do, and I respect the creator because here's the thing with creators. Yeah, somebody just said exactly. Creators aren't slave to their fans. Yeah, right on. They're not. Here's the thing with creators. Like, when you are a creator, when you make a universe, when Star Trek, Star Wars, the Sovereign Universe, Stargate, I don't care, whatever the fuck it is. Okay. When you create a universe, like, parts of you are there. It's impossible for it not to be, unless you're just, you're just some kind of like creative hitman. You know what I mean? Where you make us a fun lawyer show or something, and they just do that. But if you're really coming up with something very new from the ground up, like much of science fiction and fantasy is, okay, this is somebody being very courageous in putting a lot of themselves out there. And I think that there's, if you actually enjoy even parts of what they're putting out there, then respect them for it. Who gets a really short shrift that annoys the fuck out of me. And I have a special attachment to this character because I've kind of grown up with this character. So in the 90s, my very formative teenage years, I remember the first time that I got an advertisement for the Science Fiction Book Club. Okay. And we're getting up. We're already. This has been going really fast. We're already almost on the hour mark. But I'm going to tell this story. So, the Science Fiction Book Club, they said, okay, you can, you get the little magazine in the mail. Again, the internet sure sort of existed at this point, but not as we know it. Like I've always said on Sovryn Tech, the internet, as you understand it, as the way people talk about the internet, didn't really exist until 2003. Okay. So with the Science Fiction Book Club, you get the little magazine and they say, here, pick out 6 books. And they had a website at the time too, but whatever, in the magazine, pick out 6 books and you get them for $1. And, the agreement is, this is like kind of the Columbia House style stuff, right? If people remember that. The agreement is that once you do that, then once a month, you need to buy a book from us at full price. Me, teenage self, 6 science fiction books for $1, you bet. Okay, I am on board with you. And I would end up, getting these. And this is how I actually first read Lord of the Rings, because for $1, I got the entire fucking trilogy in this huge, beautiful hardcover. It was awesome. And I got a bunch of other books too. You could get technical manuals through the Science Fiction Book Club and everything. I'm sure it still exists to this day. I can't imagine why that model would ever fail. And science fiction fans like to own things often enough, and they're obviously we're still around. But one of the book series that I got introduced through the Science Fiction Book Club was the Anita Blake series by Laurel K. Hamilton. And I was, you start reading it. I mean, sure, at first it's really sexy because you have this sexy, vampiric, part vampiric. Well, anyway, if you read the series, you know what I mean. We'll just say this like vampire, kind of like almost cop character or whatever. And it's this, crime noir and everything, it felt very much like it was almost like Blade Runner with vampires, just not so much futuristic. Okay. And the Anita Blake series would really, I mean, we're I don't know, some odd 20 books in. And this series over the years, since the 90s when it first started, was the first book Guilty Pleasures, I think is the name of the first book, has really changed. I mean, and now it's more erotica than it is any kind of like hard-boiled crime fiction of any kind with vampires. Now, I mean, there's full-on orgies happening in this stuff. And a lot of this, came out of, I think, a growth that Laurel K. Hamilton herself went through, where now, she's very polyamorous and she's very open about the fact that, her and her second husband, I think it is, Jonathan, and, they live with a couple. I think Guinevere and Spike are their names or something. And anyway, she finally came out a few years ago with what's happening in her life, because a lot of people wondered, hey, what happened with the Anita Blake series? Like, it used to just be like kind of almost this, vampire detective stuff. And now it's turned into, this BDSM and porn and whatever else. Like, how did this happen? I really miss my character. What the character of Anita Blake originally was. And she gets harassed. Yeah, I think she gets death threats. I mean, it's really crazy what's going on. And, that's such a shame. So again, she's putting, you can very clearly tell, and based upon what she's said in interviews over the especially recent years, she's putting herself into this universe. Not that she's necessarily Anita Blake, but certainly things she's going through where maybe hell she's having orgies or something, and she has this experience and she's putting it into her universe and on the page. And she gets shit for that. When, what the fuck, okay, so great. You people bought the books, right? You've bought the Anita Blake series for so long, and what, it takes a turn that you don't like. And so now you think you can tell the creator what to do. Are you kidding? You're going to get shit if the creator's not putting their passion on the page. And obviously for Laura K. Hamilton, having wild sex and all this other stuff and having, these unconventional relationships as everything is what she was passionate about. And so let her put it on the page. That's how you get great art, is it comes from passion. If it's just because what makes fans happy, we're going to have shitty art for the rest of our lives, folks. It's bad enough already. So yeah, when creators don't get respected for the fact that they're putting out there what they want. I mean, now if you find out that a creator is really just doing what they think will, bring most bang for the buck, well then sure, rip on them. I think this is a situation with most of the Marvel films, is they are just trying to appeal to the least common denominator, and it is not great art in any way, and I know art can be subjective in a lot of ways, but it's not even subjectively. I don't see it. I mean, there's something to be said for things being popcorn fun when it's self-aware that it's just, a popcorn movie, right? Where, we know it's meant to be that sort of thing. But Marvel's trying to walk some very weird lines that I think it just ends up making it play way too safe, and it starts to lose its edge and excitement. And that's why they feel they have to appeal to various cultures and subcultures and everything with a lot of their films. So anyway, okay, we're at the hour mark, but let me see what else is here. Speaking of book clubs, how about including a list of what you're reading in the newsletter or an occasional books I'm reading episode? That's a great idea. The other day I was actually thinking about doing kind of a book club, like Ellen and I, we compare, what books we're reading at the time. In fact, just the other night, we're like, she was reading Brief History of Time and I was reading Briefer History of Time. Again, I in audiobook form. I've read back when Briefer History of Time came out, which those are two different, they're both mainly by Stephen Hawking, but those are two very different books. Like Briefer History of Time was a much later book that might have come out like in 2006, I think, originally. And so there's major updates from what he did, what Stephen Hawking thought in the 90s. I mean, because, especially the field of astrophysics changes dramatically at that point. And Briefer, I like Briefer better because it doesn't concentrate. It's a little more skeptical of the TOE, of the theory of everything. I really appreciate that. And she and I were talking about that. And anyway, yeah, let's see. Someone said, I try to read multiple books at once. Yeah, I do multiple books at once. I've talked about this before on Q&As. But what I do is I read, I will read one nonfiction book and one fiction book at a time. But I won't read more than one fiction book or more than one nonfiction book at a time. But so I guess I'll read two books at a time. But that's the way that I consume them, because I mean, there's certain, there's attitudes that come along with that, or, like how you're feeling on whether or not you want something that's totally real or if you want to go with something that's unreal. And fiction, folks, understand, fiction is, I know a lot of people who read nonfiction like there's no tomorrow, and that's great. I'm glad you're reading, right? But fiction, and people have done studies and research on this. I think fiction is so important, arguably more important than nonfiction books, because fiction can do a couple of things. One is that it can inspire empathy because you're reading about what another person has gone through. Now, maybe you could get that through biography or something as well, but fiction does it really well. And especially because, there can be so many characters and there can be a point and so well thought out that you can get, it can really develop parts of your humanity reading fiction far more than I think nonfiction can. So fiction is really important in that regard. And then also, I think it inspires. It gives you ideas. One only look at Star Trek, the original series, and in fact, there was that documentary that William Shatner hosted, how Star Trek created the world. I don't think it was changed the world. I think it was created the world. And they just talked about how they saw this shit on Star Trek and they wanted to have it, and they had to go out and build it. And, everything that comes out of just trying to copy that, or do something close or maybe that they thought was better, whatever. This is really, that's where fiction is so important. And I think fiction can get messages out better than nonfiction can by a long shot, especially philosophical messages, kind of like we were talking about with Babylon 5. I think that, in fact, I've had a lot of people contact me about this, but like my Soviet Tech episodes have done so much more for people philosophically, ideologically, than probably the entirety of like my Sovryn Tech episodes where I ever bring up ethics. There's so many, I put it on the back of the Sovryn Tech t-shirt, be the future. There's so many people that said like they think about that all the time, and they just find those simple 3 words, which I'm not taking. I'm not patting myself in the back. Look, I created that. Like that's my phrase. Like I had in Soviet Tech 1 was the first time that it gets said. And it's all about, and it's similar to, kind of like be the change. It's kind of a similar idea, but I think, there should be a little more to it. But I've gotten, like I said, contacted by so many people that just said that constantly, roils around in their mind, and it can get them through the day. It inspires them and stuff like that, and that was total fiction, that whole concept. And I'm really honored by that. But anyway, let's see. I'll get through these last comments here, and then we got to wrap it up because we only go for about an hour. The Fast and the Furious films are a great example of popcorn fun. Yes, they are, because they are self-aware of what they are, right? They're not trying to be something that they're not, they know that they're not going, they're not Dostoevsky, they're not, Citizen Kane or whatever, and they're not even trying to be. They know what they are. And that's so key to making art that doesn't live up to, maybe what critics and others would say is genuinely great art. So yeah, Fast and the Furious, great example. I love those movies. Stephanie loves those movies. I know Ellen likes them too. Just awesome. So let's see. Somebody said, I start 17 things at once and never finish any of them. I guess you mean the books. And yeah, I can understand that. A really great thing to do, like I mentioned, A Briefer History of Time, or Neil deGrasse Tyson had a recent book come out, which actually I want to review, because particularly the last chapter was really interesting, where he talks about the cosmic mindset. And this is a very new book. Like this book just came out, I think, in 2017. But those 2 books, it's Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, I think is the title of it. They're only 4 hours long. Even if you listen to them at 1x speed, they're only 4 hours long. These are really short books. I think with a lot of things, some people talk about how if you do the little things first and then you can get to the bigger stuff. I think if you start putting books away behind you, you listen to shorter books, like books that are about 4 hours long. And if you listen to it at 2x or 1.8x, you can be done in a couple hours, right? I think that starts to build up where, I like this. You even feel good about the fact that you've read those books, and that you've gone and you've consumed them and you've gone through them. And then you can start getting into where you read the bigger stuff and you start to get through it. So that's something to consider. But anyway, that book with Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson, the last chapter was really phenomenal, where he was talking about the cosmic mindset. And he even talks about where like governments don't matter, all these different things don't matter. And it reminded me, which is something that I've said a long time ago, on Sovryn Tech, where I said, because I get people ask me, it's like, well, like, where do you come up with this shit? And not necessarily fiction, but like any of my ideas. And I said, well, I have this, what I call the galactic mindset. I didn't call it a cosmic mindset like Neil deGrasse Tyson did, but I talked about it years ago. And the galactic mindset is literally you think about things on a galactic scale. How much does this really matter in the grand scheme? And there are things that happen on Earth that could absolutely matter in the grand scheme. Okay, because again, humans are, as I say often, and I'm not the only person to say this, humans are meant to be a multi-planet species. So sure, what we do is going to have ramifications through the entire universe sooner or later. And, having that galactic mindset and starting from that, That's so key, and it gives you I think it gives you a beautiful perspective, and it almost like plays into kind of like a sense of Shenku, where you just know like no matter where you are, you can say you're setting roots down and stuff, but really you're always a perpetual traveler throughout the galaxy. And I think that alone gives you a very different mindset. It's a really powerful thing to go with. But I was pleased that something similar was being said now by Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'd never heard him say anything like that before, but that now at least he's putting it out there, and he called it the cosmic mindset. I don't think I'm going to change my term from the galactic mindset, but I might, mention them interchangeably, which I thought was really powerful. So, and that book overall, other than the fact that I think speaking about the Big Bang with such certainty is rough, it was actually a very well done book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. So, okay, let's see. It kind of get these last comments. It kind of annoys me when science writers tell their readers that there isn't much math content to worry about in their books. Yeah, everything's math, right? Let's see. Another person. I hate the attitude of, quote, I only read nonfiction because I need to read useful things, end quote. Yeah, I hate that attitude too, because that's bullshit. That's total bullshit. I know, and granted, Star Trek isn't primarily about reading, but just as an example, I know that I would not have the passion for tech, for learning, for science, for all the things, even sex, for all the things in my life, if it wasn't for fiction, if it wasn't for Star Trek. Like, that is central, to who I am as a person in reality, and that interacts with others and that creates things in reality. It is absolutely central. That is nonsense to say that fiction is useless, or that you can't get anything out of it. That's just crazy. We've been talking about that this whole episode. Black Panther, Babylon 5, all that. So yeah, don't let people say that sort of shit to you. Like you're saying, fiction is useful and important. Yeah, exactly. I think fiction helps people get on board with new ideas and new ways of life more than nonfiction, maybe. Yeah, I think it's true. I think it's absolutely true. I've even heard, this was years ago at Keenvention, of all people, who I was already doing this because I had just come out with video games, and I'd done interviews on Free Talk Live where I made it very clear that this is to help spread anarchism, by making these video games with a fictional story that has characters that believe in this sort of thing. But it was at Keenvention, and there was a panel. Stephanie was on the panel, and I'll say the name, Chris Cantwell was on the panel. Chris Cantwell actually made a good point. He rarely ever does that. And a character that is well out of the spotlight, thankfully. So I'm not really giving him credit, but the point he made, he said, freedom lovers aren't into fiction enough, and they're not creating enough fiction. And I totally agree with that statement. That statement and that statement alone. I do not agree with Chris Cantwell on anything else, but I'll say that he said it. And I was, at the time, especially, I was way on board with that, and I still am. That's the bulk of what everything I do has my philosophy and ideologies, and I can't help it. I don't think any creator can help it. So, yeah, I think fiction is much overlooked by just about any ideology. I think almost every ideology overlooks fiction. I think Satanism overlooks fiction. Go down the list of people that, Christianity is all right. I won't say it. You know what I was going to say, but I think most philosophies and ideologies ignore fiction at their peril. Let's see. Tyson is great when he is only talking about astrophysics. Yeah, obviously politically he's nuts. Like, in fact, I did years ago, I did an episode like calling him out on, just like he completely, and you can prove how contradictory he is when it comes to politics, political statements based upon what politician is in office and everything. It's really terrible. But he is definitely, like Carl Sagan and some others, a very powerful speaker and a great teacher when it comes to, a lot of science. I don't agree with him about the Big Bang. I'm far more amenable to the quasi-steady state theory, or to, I got to give him credit, because in the series Cosmos, at the time, this was a really, really new idea, but it checked a lot of boxes really well. The idea that we're like the corona of like a fourth dimensional black hole. That's what our universe is. He actually admitted that that's a possibility in Cosmos. So he's not so hard edged on it being the Big Bang. I'll give him the little bit of credit for that. But he's he's, I mean, a lot of people don't know this today, but like the scientific community and a lot of science students and whatever, which I guess would be part of the scientific community, they hated Sagan back in the day. Like, I mean, that seems crazy that anybody could hate Carl Sagan now. But back then, like, they didn't like him. And, I think these kinds of people and some of their message is very useful. But I agree, who wants to listen to them politically? I mean, they make asses of themselves. So let's see. Much of modern tech would not exist without shows like Star Trek. Yep, absolutely. Philosophically, too, he is nuts. Meaning Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, I think by and large, though, like I said, that chapter he did about the cosmic mindset is fairly on point. Like I think it's the higher road that I think more humans would do well to consider. Let's see. Then someone says, that's why I strongly believe in Davi Barker's Survivor Max. Yeah. I won't say anything bad about Survivor Max. I'm actually a character in those stories. There is an Agent Sovryn. If I remember correctly, I haven't read them in a little while, but there was part of it. See, this is the thing. So sometimes I get to see like advanced chapters, and I'm not sure if this was in an advanced chapter or that actually got published. But there is an Agent Sovryn in Survivor Max, which I think is really cool, and Stephanie's in it too, I think. So which is nice. There's like some kind of like radio show that's in the book. So yeah, happy to plug Survivor Max. Davi's work is great. So okay. I think we're a little, actually it's 5:15. So I have, and I know you may think that this is unimportant, but I don't think it's unimportant. I have a workout to get in, and I'm going to go take care of that. And like I said, this usually only goes about an hour. Sometimes it runs a few minutes later. I enjoyed the hell out of doing this with all of you. I liked all of you being in the YouTube chat. I thought that was really cool. I love talking about all the geeky stuff. And you saw where it led into philosophy. I mean, like it can't help but do so. Which I think that's one of Sovryn Tech's strengths, is that we can always take it in that direction, or we're willing to go in that direction if it needs to. But I really enjoyed this hangout, and that it was all geeky shit. Again, I would have been happy to talk about any tech, any science, whatever the hell you wanted to talk about. You want to talk about anarchism, that's fine too. But really, really enjoyed this one. I loved the questions you guys sent in. And I mean, if that's what you patrons, remember, you control the content that happens on Patreon. Okay. A lot of you I know love the Sovryn Tech First University books that I've been doing. Got a lot of great response from the Egoist Encyclopedia that I released this week. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Let's see. All right, hold on. There's a couple. All right, it says, already love this chat. I like talking to you. I love talking with you guys and gals and Z's. You know that. This was a great time. Thanks everyone. Yeah, this was great. Will you ever come back to Facebook? We miss you in the group. So he said, LOL. I can't picture it. Now it's almost like a point of pride, and I do. I kind of miss, connecting with people in the Sovryn Tech Facebook group as well. I know people still post in there. Sometimes Stephanie will still tell me about posts that get made in there. So I still kind of quasi keep an eye on it in other ways. Like somebody said that they listened to episode 265 of Sovryn Tech, and they just absolutely loved it, about how you've forgotten how to read. I'm really honored by that. Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever get back to that. I don't know. I'll try and think of ways, to allow for, that kind of connection to happen. I interact with people as much as I can on Patreon when people make Patreon posts, but that doesn't work as well as like a threaded group. I really understand that. And that's like a weakness that IRC has as well, because I love IRC. So I don't know. We'll see, folks. But right now, just to give you a little update on me, like I'm trying so hard to, once again, over the 6 years of Sovryn Tech, there have been years, or like a year or a period of some months, where I'm trying to get to the show to another level. Again, I don't need to make money doing this. I really don't. I don't need to, I don't need thousands and thousands of listeners and blah, blah, blah to do this. I do this because there's a part of me that just like has to, that's why I think anybody does anything. A little bit of enlightened self-interest, and but right now I'm trying to, with the new co-hosts, I'm trying to get things to another level. And there's for me personally, there's a lot of, and it's not really bad things. Like it's good things that are happening for me personally, relationship wise, and in other areas that like I'm spending time on, and I don't think you're hurting for content as far as that goes. But social media would definitely be a major distraction, like a Facebook group and things like this would be a major distraction from some of these things that will only make Sovryn Tech better and will only help spread what Sovryn Tech tries to spread, be it the tech, the anarchism, even though I don't use the word anarchism a whole ton, anymore, because I don't think it needs to be said. I think, we can make these points even without it. Even, I mean, I'll say I'm an anarchist, just for the shorthand. But yeah, there's a lot of really, really wonderful things going on, a lot of wonderful things going on in my life. And, that's it. Like so a lot of that I'm concentrating on. A lot of that has to do with Sovryn Tech, so yeah. And it's funny because like, and this is why I think I've been harping pretty hard on social media lately, is because like that would, if I spent time on it with it and like it, I wouldn't have been able to have these relationships that I'm fostering now. And I want everybody to be able to have this sort of thing. I really do. So that's what I'm putting out there. And, but who knows, maybe one day, I don't know, how this would all take shape. But I'm open to creating a space where we can connect more and stuff like that. But I personally feel that needs to be a way more independent thing. But that's tough to get people on board with an independent thing. It's tough to get people over like to Reddit, or it's tough to, wherever. It's tough. But I'll leave these things open for you to, certainly to use. But I understand that, yes, you want me there, and I'm really honored by that. And I love you. I love all of you for it. Yeah. Not that I need anybody's justification to live the way that I want to live. I don't need anybody's permission to lead the unconventional lifestyle that I've built and that I'm doing. But I just want you to know that it is so vindicating, and it is so emboldening, and it's so beautiful that so many of you, even just like today, we're just, we're talking Star Trek and whatever else. I mean, and all that, like the fact that you're willing to do that with me. I mean, like you can't imagine, I don't mean to sound cheesy, folks, but really you can't imagine how much it warms my heart that you want to do that, and so thank you. Thank you for being a patron. Thank you for, for being a part of this. Thank you for being along the ride. I know some of you have been along for years. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be going for a long, long time. And that's the thing. We're just making it, we're just trying to make it bigger and better. That's all. Thank you, because yeah, you've made my life in so many ways that I can't even begin to describe. You have made my life so amazing. And I want the absolute same for every single one of you. I want you to just, I want shit to be fucking awesome for you. Okay. So anyway, that's that. Someone said, thank you for your service, sir. Yeah. Thank you, all of you, for your service. Thank you to the patrons. Thank you to the listeners. All right, that's it. We'll wrap this up. I will see all of you on the other side. Cool stuff coming up. Don't worry. You know it. So somebody just said, in it for the long haul. I am. Right on. This is, we're going to be around. Don't worry. So, all right, that's it. Like I said, I will see you on the other side. Woo!